It was an ordinary afternoon in the bustling city. The sun was high in the sky, casting warm golden light over the streets. People were going about their daily lives, some rushing to work, others chatting with friends, while cars moved steadily along the busy roads. Among the vehicles gliding through the streets, one luxury car stood out, a sleek black sports car, glinting under the sunlight. Inside sat a billionaire, a person used to comfort and speed, wrapped in the calm confidence that comes with wealth and power. To the people around, it was just another car, another person in the city, but little did anyone know that this day would change everything in a way no one could imagine. The billionaire was driving along a familiar route, thinking about meetings, plans, and future investments. There was a sense of normalcy, an almost routine calm, that made the city feel like it was moving in slow motion. Meanwhile, on the sidewalk, a janitor quietly went about her work. She was unassuming, dressed in her simple uniform, pushing her cart filled with cleaning supplies. Her life was ordinary, just like countless others walking the streets or sitting in cafes. She had no idea that her ordinary afternoon was about to collide with an extraordinary moment, one that would test courage, humanity, and quick thinking. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the air, a strange popping noise that made a few pedestrians turn their heads. The billionaire's car began to smoke slightly, a thin wisp curling up from under the hood. At first, it seemed minor, something mechanical that could be fixed later, but within seconds the smoke thickened and started to turn black, curling aggressively around the vehicle. The peaceful city street began to feel tense, and those nearby sensed that something serious was happening. Then, without warning, flames shot out from the car's engine, fierce and hungry, licking the sides of the sleek vehicle. The fire's bright orange glow reflected off the windows, and a wave of heat radiated into the surroundings. People on the street froze in shock, unsure what to do, some pulling out their phones to record, others just staring, paralyzed by fear. The billionaire, trapped inside, suddenly realized the danger, panic flashing across his face. The car that had represented comfort and safety just moments ago had become a cage, a fiery trap from which escape seemed almost impossible. From across the street, the janitor noticed the smoke and flames. At first, she thought it might be a minor accident, something the authorities would handle. But as the fire grew larger, her heart raced, and she saw the billionaire struggling inside the car. In that moment, something inside her shifted, a spark of bravery, a call to act. Ordinary life and ordinary routines vanished, replaced by the urgent reality of a life in danger. She didn't pause to think about the risks or the danger of the flames. She only knew that someone's life depended on her. Around the scene, the city continued to move, but with a cautious distance. Pedestrians whispered to each other, cars slowed, and a sense of helplessness spread. The contrast between the frantic fire and the calm, everyday world around it created a surreal feeling. The fire seemed almost unreal against the backdrop of cafes, shops, and people walking dogs, the ordinary and extraordinary colliding in the most dramatic way. Every second mattered, and the tension was electric in the air, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Even in those first few moments, the janitor's courage began to define the scene. She was just a janitor, someone people might overlook or ignore in everyday life, but the bravery in her heart transformed her into a hero before she even moved. Her presence brought a sense of hope, even amidst the roaring flames. She glanced around quickly, calculating her approach, and then, with determination, she began to move toward the burning car. Each step was deliberate, driven by a mixture of instinct and compassion. As she approached, the billionaire's panic grew, the realization of danger becoming more urgent with every passing second. The fire roared louder, smoke thickened, and the heat became intense. The city's ordinary hum faded into the background as time seemed to slow, every detail sharp. The crackling of fire, the smell of smoke, the expressions on the few onlookers' faces. It was a scene that would soon be unforgettable, the beginning of a story that would inspire millions, all starting from one ordinary afternoon and the unexpected courage of an ordinary person. In those first moments, before any action was taken, the stage was set. The ordinary street, the ordinary people, the ordinary routines, all were about to be transformed by an extraordinary act of heroism. This was not just a story about a fire or a car or even wealth. It was a story about courage, humanity, and the unpredictability of life. In the blink of an eye, the city became the backdrop for something remarkable, something that would prove that heroism can emerge from the most unexpected places. While the city buzzed around her, the janitor moved quietly, her routine as ordinary as any other day. She had been sweeping the streets, collecting trash, and ensuring the sidewalks remained clean for the thousands of people who hurried past without a second thought. Her hands were rough from years of work, and her uniform was simple, worn at the edges, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. No one watching would have imagined that this unassuming woman, pushing her cart along the street, would soon become the center of a story that would captivate the world. She had grown up in a neighborhood where life was often tough. She had learned early that courage wasn't always about heroics. It was about standing firm in the face of fear, making choices that mattered even when no one was watching, and helping others because it was simply the right thing to do. Her past had shaped her into someone who noticed details others overlooked. Today, that attention to detail would save a life. As the smoke from the car grew thicker, her instincts kicked in. She didn't hesitate or panic. Her eyes locked on the flames, and she saw the billionaire trapped inside, wriggling, pressing against the seatbelt, fear etched on his face. For a brief moment, she weighed the danger, knowing the fire could spread, that the car could explode. But in that instant, all the fear melted into determination. She realized that hesitation would cost a life, and she simply couldn't allow that. The janitor moved swiftly, almost instinctively. Her footsteps, though quiet moments before, became purposeful and urgent. Every passerby seemed to freeze in disbelief as she approached, recognizing that this woman, whom they had probably seen countless times without thought, was now facing a raging inferno without a second glance at her own safety. There was something magnetic about her courage, a raw human bravery that seemed to rise from the depths of ordinary life and transform her into someone extraordinary in the eyes of everyone watching. Her mind worked quickly. She knew she had seconds to act. She scanned the car for the safest way to reach the trapped billionaire. The fire crackled violently, heat radiating like an invisible wall, yet she pressed on, ignoring the sweat forming on her brow and the sting of smoke in her lungs. She thought not of herself, but only of the person struggling to escape. Every ordinary experience she had ever had, every job, every hardship, had prepared her for this moment. She understood that heroism didn't require a cape or recognition. It required action when it mattered most. As she reached the car, she could hear the billionaire calling for help, panic in his voice, but he couldn't open the doors. She could see the fear in his eyes, the disbelief that someone ordinary, someone he would never have expected, was the one running toward him. Her presence, steady and unwavering, brought a calm urgency to the chaos around them. People on the street stepped back, unsure, watching as this seemingly ordinary woman prepared to do something extraordinary. For her, it wasn't about recognition or reward. She didn't think about the cameras, the stories, or the fame that might come later. Her only focus was the life in front of her, the person trapped in fire and fear, and the knowledge that she had the power to change the outcome. Courage, she realized, is often quiet. It doesn't roar or demand attention. It acts. It risks everything when needed. In this moment, she embodied that truth fully. Even as the flames licked the sides of the car, her movements were calculated yet fearless. She spoke softly, though she barely had time, reassuring the billionaire with words that cut through panic. "I've got you. Stay calm. I'm here." Her voice, calm but firm, anchored the moment. This ordinary janitor, unnoticed moments ago, was now the embodiment of bravery. Her actions demonstrated that heroism is not about wealth, status, or recognition. It's about courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when the moment demands it. Every detail of her approach reflected her humanity. She wasn't reckless, she was focused. She didn't consider herself special, she only considered the life she was about to save. And in that ordinary street, amid the chaos and fear, she transformed from a janitor into a hero, someone whose courage would not only save a billionaire's life but would also inspire everyone who witnessed it. The moment was monumental, not just for the man trapped in the fire, but for the world, reminding everyone that true heroism can emerge from the most unexpected people, in the most unexpected moments. Time seemed to slow as the janitor closed the distance between herself and the burning car. Every second mattered. The flames were growing, twisting and dancing violently around the vehicle, and smoke poured into the air like a dark, suffocating cloud. The heat was intense, almost unbearable, radiating outward in waves that made the street shimmer and the metal of the car glow red. Pedestrians had scattered to a safe distance, their eyes wide with fear, some pulling out their phones, others frozen in disbelief. But she didn't see them. Her focus was singular, sharp, and unwavering, the life trapped inside that blazing car. With every step, the fire's roar grew louder, a wild, chaotic sound that seemed to mock her approach. Yet she pressed on. Her legs moved quickly but carefully, navigating broken glass, stray debris, and the rising smoke that clawed at her throat and eyes. The city around her seemed distant, almost unreal, replaced by the immediate, urgent need to save a life. She could feel the heat on her face, the sting of smoke in her lungs, but she did not falter. Fear was there, yes, but it was sharpened into determination. As she reached the side of the car, she could see the billionaire clearly for the first time. Panic was written across his face, his hands pressed against the window, trying desperately to find a way out. The seatbelt had him trapped, and the flames were creeping ever closer, threatening to engulf the entire vehicle. In that moment, the disparity between their worlds, the billionaire's life of wealth and comfort, and her life of quiet struggle and hard work, disappeared entirely. What mattered was not status, not wealth, not fame. It was a human life, fragile and in imminent danger, and her courage in this moment. She didn't hesitate. Her hands gripped the metal of the car, steady and strong, and she began assessing the situation with lightning speed. Which door would give the fastest exit? Could she pull the seatbelt free? Would the fire spread before she could reach him? Every decision mattered. This was no time for error, no room for hesitation. The world had narrowed down to two people, the janitor and the man trapped inside the fiery cage. Around her, the chaos seemed almost surreal. A crowd of onlookers watched from a distance, their phones capturing every second, their murmurs blending with the crackle of fire. Some shouted warnings, others offered advice from afar, but she ignored them all. There was only the task in front of her. Her entire life of observing, calculating, and acting under pressure culminated in this single decisive moment. Every step, every movement had a purpose. The billionaire's panic intensified as he realized the fire was growing faster, smoke filling the car and making it hard to breathe. His eyes darted around, seeking any form of escape, but all he saw was the inferno closing in. And then he saw her. At first, disbelief flashed across his face. An ordinary janitor, a person he would never have imagined saving him, was running straight into the fire without hesitation. His fear began to mingle with awe, a mix of desperation and hope, as he realized that this ordinary person might just be his salvation. The janitor reached the car and spoke to him, her voice calm and commanding despite the chaos. "Hold on. I'm getting you out," she shouted over the roar of the fire. There was a firmness in her tone that left no room for panic, a promise that she would not leave until he was safe. In that moment, her courage became contagious, seeping into the billionaire's mind, giving him a sliver of calm amid the storm of fear and smoke. She began working on the door and seatbelt, her movements precise, her mind focused, every second a critical choice. The heat was almost unbearable, the smoke thick enough to choke, yet she did not retreat. She leaned closer to the flames, feeling the blistering heat on her skin, but her determination burned brighter. This was more than bravery. It was instinct, humanity, and selflessness converging in a single act. The ordinary janitor had become a force of nature, moving with urgency and focus that only desperation and courage can create. As the moments stretched, it became clear to everyone watching that this was a race against time. Every passing second made the flames grow, every inhale of smoke a risk, every decision a matter of life and death. Yet she pressed on, resolute and unyielding, as if her strength alone could hold back the fire. And in that extraordinary moment, the city, the crowd, the billionaire, all became witnesses to something remarkable. A single courageous individual defying fear and danger to save a life that seemed almost unreachable. The janitor reached the car, her heart pounding but her mind sharp and focused. She could feel the heat radiating from the flames, the metal of the vehicle scorching her fingertips even through her gloves. Smoke swirled around her, thick and choking, making it almost impossible to see, but she refused to let fear or uncertainty stop her. Her eyes locked on the billionaire inside, who was now pressed against the seatbelt, panic consuming him. Every second mattered. Every moment she delayed could mean the difference between life and death. She crouched slightly, assessing the doors, the seatbelt, and the interior, her hands moving with surprising precision. Though the fire was raging, she moved calmly but quickly, a rhythm born from instinct and urgency. The billionaire's eyes widened as he realized she wasn't hesitating. "Please hurry," he shouted over the roar of the flames, his voice trembling. She nodded briefly, offering a reassuring glance before returning her attention to the task. In that moment, words were unnecessary. Her actions spoke louder than anything she could say. The first challenge was the seatbelt. It was caught, locked tight, holding him like a chain against the flames. The janitor's hands worked deftly, pulling and tugging with every ounce of strength she had. Smoke stung her eyes, the fire's heat licked her arms, but she ignored it all. Her determination was unwavering. She knew that hesitation now would cost a life. Around them, the street had gone silent. Onlookers had retreated to safety, phones raised to record, but all attention was on this woman, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in courage. After several tense seconds, the seatbelt finally gave way. Relief flashed across the billionaire's face, but there was no time to celebrate. The car was a furnace, flames licking the windows and smoke thickening, threatening to engulf him completely. The janitor reached inside, gripping his arm firmly. Her strength, coupled with calm focus, gave him hope. "I've got you. Just hold on," she said, her voice steady and commanding. He nodded, desperation mixing with trust, and together they began the careful extraction. She maneuvered him, pulling him through the open door, navigating the space carefully to avoid touching the hottest parts of the car. Flames roared closer, the metal burning and cracking, but she refused to let go. Sweat poured down her face, mingling with soot and ash, but her eyes never wavered from the task. The billionaire, despite his wealth and power, depended entirely on her. In those moments, all social hierarchies, all barriers disappeared. It was not money or influence that mattered, it was courage, humanity, and the will to survive. Finally, with one last effort, she pulled him completely out of the car. He stumbled onto the pavement, coughing, gasping for air and choking on smoke, but alive. She stepped back immediately after, her hands shaking slightly from adrenaline but her focus still sharp. She guided him further away from the burning vehicle, ensuring they were both at a safe distance. Around them, bystanders erupted into applause and relieved cheers, but she barely noticed. Her attention was entirely on him, checking that he was breathing, that he could stand, that he was safe. The billionaire sank to his knees, overcome by shock, relief, and gratitude. He looked at the janitor, unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. He had been minutes, or even seconds, from disaster, and now he was alive, thanks to this courageous, unassuming woman. She stood calmly, catching her breath, her uniform smudged with ash and sweat, the flames reflecting in her eyes. Her humility was striking. She did not wait for praise or accolades, she had only done what she had to do. For everyone watching, the scene was nothing short of miraculous. An ordinary janitor had risked her life to save a billionaire, defying danger with courage and composure that seemed almost superhuman. The flames continued to roar behind them, a reminder of the peril they had escaped, but in that moment the rescue was complete. Life had been preserved, and a story that would inspire millions had been written in mere minutes. This was not just a rescue, it was a testament to bravery, compassion, and the extraordinary power of ordinary people. The janitor had stepped into danger when no one else dared, acting selflessly and decisively. In the face of fire, smoke, and fear, she had become a hero, forever changing the life of the billionaire and creating a story that the world would never forget. As the janitor stepped back from the burning car, her chest heaving from the effort and adrenaline, the billionaire remained on his knees, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. His clothes were smudged with soot, his face streaked with sweat and ash, and his hands shook uncontrollably. For a moment, he could do nothing but stare at her, the reality of his near-death experience crashing down on him like a tidal wave. The roar of the fire behind them, the chaos of the crowd, and the city's normal hum all faded into the background. In that instant, there was only one undeniable truth. This ordinary woman had saved his life. Shock was written across his features, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and awe. He had been seconds away from a fiery death, trapped inside his car, and yet here he was, alive, breathing, standing on the solid ground of reality. The sheer magnitude of what had just occurred began to sink in, and with it came an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The billionaire, a man accustomed to controlling everything around him, found himself completely powerless in the face of the janitor's courage. For the first time in his life, wealth, influence, and status meant nothing. Life, raw and fragile, was all that mattered, and she had preserved it. He looked at her, trying to find words, but none seemed sufficient. How could he express the depth of what he felt? How could he thank someone whose actions had defied danger, expectation, and even reason? She had run into flames without hesitation, risked her life, and done what most would have considered impossible. His mind raced, grappling with a mixture of shock, relief, and a dawning admiration for this remarkable woman who had appeared so ordinary just minutes ago. The crowd around them was hushed now, sensing the intensity of the moment. Murmurs of astonishment and admiration spread, but they seemed distant to the billionaire. He remained on his knees, staring at the janitor as if he were witnessing a miracle. Each detail, the soot on her uniform, the sweat on her brow, the ash clinging to her hair, told the story of her bravery, her determination, and her humanity. Every instinct he had relied on for control and power now seemed trivial in comparison to the courage she had displayed. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke, though the words trembled with emotion. I don't even know what to say. You saved my life. You actually saved my life. His knees sank lower into the pavement, not just in physical exhaustion but in awe and humility. It was a moment of complete vulnerability, a rare and profound acknowledgement of someone else's courage. He had been humbled in an instant, stripped of pride, ego, and the illusions of invincibility that wealth and status had provided. The janitor, ever humble, offered a soft smile, shaking her head slightly. I just did what anyone would do. Stay calm. You're safe now. Her words, simple as they were, carried a weight that struck him even more deeply than the act itself. There was no pretense, no need for recognition, only the quiet, unwavering bravery of someone who acted because it was the right thing to do. As he absorbed the magnitude of the moment, the billionaire's emotions shifted from shock to gratitude, a deep, overwhelming gratitude that went beyond mere words. Tears began to form in his eyes as he realized that life, fragile and fleeting, had been extended because of her courage. The experience had changed him, stripped away his assumptions about life and people, and revealed a profound truth. Heroism is not about money, power, or status. It is about action, compassion, and the willingness to risk everything for another person. For the onlookers, the scene was equally powerful. They witnessed the stark contrast between ordinary life and extraordinary heroism, between everyday existence and a life saved through courage. The billionaire's awe, combined with her humility, created a moment that would be remembered forever. A story that demonstrated the profound impact of one person's bravery on the life of another. In those first moments after the rescue, before reporters arrived or cameras captured the scene, it was a raw human connection. A life saved, gratitude expressed in silence and tears, and the recognition that extraordinary courage could come from the most ordinary places. It was a moment that neither of them, nor anyone who witnessed it, would ever forget. A moment that transformed both lives forever. As the smoke began to curl upward from the burning car behind them and the crowd of onlookers watched in stunned silence, the billionaire struggled to process everything that had just happened. He was alive, safe and whole, but his mind was still racing. How could one person, a seemingly ordinary janitor, have risked everything to save his life? He felt an overwhelming mixture of relief, admiration, and disbelief. Then, as if the moment itself had slowed, he looked at her, the woman who had just pulled him from the jaws of death, and waited silently for her to speak. She stepped closer, her uniform smudged with ash, hair sticking to her sweat-soaked forehead, but her eyes were calm and steady, radiating quiet strength. The intensity of the flames behind them made the scene almost surreal, like something out of a movie, but this was real, and every second had the weight of life itself. She knelt slightly to meet his gaze, and for a brief moment, it was as if the noise of the city, the roar of the fire, and even the awe of the onlookers faded away. There was only her and him and the life she had just saved. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft but carried a weight that shook him more profoundly than the fire or the adrenaline ever could. You have a life worth living, and today it wasn't your time to go, she said. Her words were simple, yet they held a power that went far beyond language. They reminded him of something fundamental, something that no amount of money or power could ever buy, the fragility and preciousness of life, and the human courage that could protect it. The billionaire stared at her, his breath catching in his throat. Her words were not boastful, nor were they seeking praise. They were grounded in truth, compassion, and humanity. She continued, life is not about the riches you have or the people you know. It's about moments like these, about what you do when it really matters. Her calm voice cut through the shock, grounding him, helping him absorb not only the fact that he had survived but the reason behind it. She had acted out of selflessness, not obligation or expectation, and now her words carried the weight of wisdom and courage. Her words seemed to resonate in the air around them. The billionaire, still on his knees, felt a wave of humility crash over him. For the first time, he realized that no amount of wealth or status could prepare him for moments like this. He had always believed that power could shield him, that influence could protect him, but it had been the courage of an ordinary woman, someone he might never have noticed otherwise, who had truly saved him. The irony was overwhelming. The janitor's gaze held him, steady and unwavering, and she added, remember this, true strength isn't about what you own. True strength is about what you do when no one else is watching, when it really counts. Those words hit him harder than the fire had, harder than the fear, harder than anything he had ever experienced. It was as if the world had shifted in that single instant, and he saw not only the heroism in front of him but the lessons he would carry for the rest of his life. The billionaire's hands trembled as he reached forward, attempting to express gratitude that words could not contain. Tears welled in his eyes, a rare vulnerability in a man accustomed to controlling everything around him. She had not only saved his life but also humbled him, opened his eyes, and reminded him of the true value of courage and humanity. The act itself had been extraordinary, but the words she spoke afterward transformed the moment into something even deeper, something spiritual in its simplicity and sincerity. Around them, the crowd seemed to sense the gravity of the exchange. Murmurs of awe rippled through the onlookers, many wiping tears from their eyes as they watched the billionaire absorb the janitor's wisdom. It was a powerful reminder that heroism does not require fame or fortune, that courage can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the simplest words can carry the deepest meaning. Finally, the billionaire, still kneeling, whispered hoarsely, I will never forget this. Thank you, truly from the bottom of my heart." She nodded, offering only a small, humble smile. Her mission had been accomplished. She had saved a life and in doing so reminded everyone present, and perhaps the world beyond, what it meant to be truly brave, truly human, and truly selfless. In that instant, the fire, the fear, and the chaos all faded into memory. What remained was the undeniable impact of words spoken in courage, a life saved, and a lesson learned. Heroism is measured not by wealth or status, but by the courage to act and the wisdom to inspire others through the simplest truths. That moment, brief yet eternal, would live on forever in the billionaire's heart, and in the hearts of everyone who would hear of it. The billionaire remained on his knees, the reality of his survival slowly settling over him like a wave. His chest heaved, his lungs still struggling to expel the smoke he had inhaled moments ago. Every part of him shook, not from the fire he had escaped, but from the overwhelming mixture of shock, awe, and gratitude that flooded his being. He looked up at the janitor, whose calm, composed presence seemed almost surreal against the chaos of the burning car behind them. He could hardly comprehend what had just happened. One ordinary woman had defied danger, risked her life, and pulled him from a fiery fate in a way that defied every expectation of his carefully controlled, orderly world. For a long, silent moment he could only stare. Words failed him. He had always been a man of influence and power, used to being in control of every situation. Yet here, in this instant, he was utterly powerless, except for the fact that this woman had chosen to act where he could not. The disparity between his world of wealth and hers of quiet labor vanished completely. It no longer mattered who owned what or who held what title. What mattered was courage, compassion, and the undeniable proof that heroism could emerge from the most unexpected places. As the smoke continued to curl from the car and the distant sirens signaled approaching help, the billionaire's mind struggled to make sense of it all. He had been so close to death that the memory of fear lingered like a phantom. But now, standing, or rather kneeling, before the janitor, he realized that life itself had granted him a second chance. And it wasn't just any life, it was a life that had been extended by the selfless actions of someone who had no obligation, no expectation of reward, and no reason to risk themselves beyond the simple truth that it was the right thing to do. The emotions welled up inside him, humility, reverence, gratitude, and awe. He looked at her with a depth of feeling that words could barely contain. Slowly, as if acknowledging the enormity of what he owed her, he fell fully to his knees, placing both hands on the pavement. Tears welled in his eyes, streaming down his face as he whispered brokenly, "I don't deserve this. I can't believe." His voice trailed off, choked with emotion. He had been humbled in a way that no fortune, no achievement, and no influence could ever achieve. Around them, the crowd of onlookers held their breath, sensing the gravity of the moment. Some pressed their hands to their mouths, eyes wide with amazement. Others whispered prayers or words of awe. Cameras captured the scene, but no recording could truly convey the intensity of what had just transpired. The billionaire's reaction was raw, unfiltered, and entirely human, a profound acknowledgement of life, mortality, and the extraordinary courage of another person. He reached out, shaking slightly, to grasp her hands, trying to communicate in touch what words could not. I can never repay you," he murmured, voice quivering. The janitor gently withdrew her hands, offering only a calm smile. She had no need for repayment, no desire for accolades. The act had been its own reward, a testament to the power of courage, selflessness, and humanity. Yet the billionaire's expression showed that even without her acknowledgement, he understood fully the magnitude of what she had done. He stayed there, on his knees, long after the fire had been contained, long after the danger had passed, long after the adrenaline had ebbed. He remained in silent gratitude, humbled by the enormity of her bravery. Each breath he took was a reminder of life renewed, of mortality escaped, and of the quiet heroism that existed in the world, often unnoticed, until it shone in moments like this. In those moments, he realized that courage was not measured in power or wealth but in action, in the willingness to face fear for the sake of another human being. For the billionaire, the world had changed forever in those few intense minutes. He would never again view life, people, or even himself in the same way. The janitor, ordinary in appearance yet extraordinary in action, had opened his eyes to truths he had long overlooked. That heroism can be found in anyone, that selflessness is more valuable than any fortune, and that gratitude is a powerful, humbling force that can reshape even the most confident soul. And so, on the pavement, with the fire still flickering in the background, the billionaire remained on his knees, completely and utterly transformed, not by the wealth he had accumulated, not by the status he had earned, but by the courage, humility, and humanity of one ordinary woman who had risked everything to save a life. It was a moment of pure, unforgettable connection, a story of gratitude and awe that would live on in his heart forever. The city slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but for those who had witnessed the event, nothing would ever feel ordinary again. The fire trucks arrived, their sirens piercing the air, and the firefighters quickly took control, extinguishing the remaining flames and ensuring the car was no longer a threat. Police officers and emergency personnel began cordoning off the area, directing curious onlookers to safety, and the crowd slowly dispersed. Yet in the hearts and minds of those who had watched, the memory of what had happened burned brighter than any fire could. For the billionaire, the aftermath was more than physical recovery, it was a transformation of perspective. The experience had stripped away the layers of wealth, influence, and ego, revealing the raw truth about life. It is fragile, precious, and often unpredictable. The billionaire would never forget the janitor, whose courage had bridged the gap between ordinary and extraordinary, between the everyday and the life-saving. In the quiet moments after the rescue, he made a vow, not just to express gratitude in words, but to honor her bravery in action. The lesson was clear. True heroism transcends status, and humanity cannot be measured by wealth or position. The janitor, meanwhile, returned to her work with a quiet humility that defined her character. She did not seek recognition or reward. For her, the act had been instinctual, a decision made in a moment when hesitation could have meant tragedy. Yet news of her courage spread rapidly. Witnesses shared their accounts, videos went viral, and media outlets clamored to tell the story. She became a symbol of selflessness, bravery, and the extraordinary power of ordinary people. In every story written, every video shared, and every discussion sparked, her actions reminded the world that true heroism often comes from those who are least expected to wield it. Communities were inspired. People began sharing stories of everyday heroes, teachers, firefighters, volunteers, and ordinary citizens who risked their lives or went above and beyond to help others. The janitor's bravery ignited a conversation about courage, compassion, and the power of decisive action in critical moments. Social media buzzed with admiration, with hashtags celebrating heroism trending worldwide. But beyond the viral attention, her story reached hearts on a deeply human level. It reminded people that courage is not inherited, earned, or purchased. It is chosen, often in small, decisive moments when fear must be faced and life defended. For the billionaire, the impact was even more personal. The encounter changed his approach to life, business, and relationships. He became an advocate for recognizing ordinary heroes, using his influence to amplify voices of courage and selflessness. Donations were made to community programs, scholarships were established, and initiatives were launched to honor unsung heroes everywhere. He often said that while his fortune had given him comfort, it was the janitor's bravery that had given him a new understanding of what it means to live fully and to value every moment. Years later, when people recounted the event, the details of the fire and rescue remained vivid, but what endured most was the essence of the story. One ordinary janitor had changed the course of a life, reminded the world of the power of courage, and created a legacy that would outlive the flames and fear. Her name became synonymous with heroism, compassion, and the idea that no act of bravery is too small, no person too ordinary, to make a monumental difference. In the end, the legacy of that extraordinary day was not in headlines, awards, or fame. It was in hearts transformed, lives inspired, and the timeless reminder that humanity, courage, and selflessness are the true measures of greatness. One act, one voice, one life saved could ripple outward, touching countless others, proving that ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things. And that day, on that city street, with smoke and ash still in the air, the world was reminded that true heroism lives not in status or wealth, but in action, courage, and the willingness to stand when others hesitate.